Les adjectifs français. Using adjectives in French is just slightly different than how we use them in English. And we want to include adjectives in our writing to make it much better and more descriptive, so it's important that we remember the rules for French adjectives. In French, adjectives must agree in gender and number with the noun that they modify. What that means is, when we have a sentence like Les garçons sont bruns, our adjective brun must have an S on it because les garçons is plural. To make adjectives agree, we must consider whether the adjectives are masculine or feminine, singular or plural. If the adjective is a regular adjective and we're using it to describe something that is masculine and singular, we don't add anything to it. But if we're describing something that is masculine and plural, we'll add an S to the end of that adjective. The S isn't pronounced, but it's there when we write it. If we're describing something that is feminine, we will add an E to the end of the adjective. The E is silent, but it will tell us to pronounce the consonant that comes before it. If we're describing something that is feminine and plural, we will add an E and an S to the end of that adjective. Again, the S is silent as well as the E, but we will pronounce the consonant that comes in front of it. For example, if we want to describe Paul as being short, we would say Paul est petit. To describe Pauline, we would say Pauline est petite. We would add an E to petite to make it feminine, and we would pronounce the T that comes before the E. To describe Pauline and Paul as being short, we would say Pauline et Paul sont petits. Because we're describing both a guy and a girl, we keep our adjective in the masculine form, but because we're describing more than one person, we add an S, and we don't pronounce the S when we say petit. Something else to mention, adjectives that already end in an E, we won't need to add another E to make it feminine. Adjectives like mince or sympathique always end in an E in both the masculine and the feminine form. Adjectives that end in an S won't need to have another S added when we're making it plural. So an adjective like français always has an S on it, whether it's something that's singular or plural. Now we would add an E and an S to français to make it française if we're describing something that's feminine and plural. And some adjectives are very irregular. For example, the adjectives for beautiful, old, and new have a masculine singular, a masculine plural, a masculine singular form that we would use only with nouns that are singular starting with a vowel, a feminine singular, and a feminine plural form. So, for example, to say something is beautiful in front of, to use the adjective beautiful with something that is masculine and singular, we would use beau. To make that plural, we would say beau. We would add an X to it. In front of something like ordinateur that starts with a vowel, we would say belle. Something that's masculine and singular and starting with a vowel can't have beau in front of it because of the two vowel sounds together. So we would use the adjective belle. Feminine and singular, we use belle, B-E-L-L-E. Feminine plural, we would use the adjective belle. To say something that is old, we would use the adjective vieux. We keep it the same in front of something that is masculine and plural. In front of something that is masculine singular that starts with a vowel, like ordinateur, we would use vieille. So a little bit different spelling, ending with the consonant L. In front of something that is feminine and singular, we use vieille. In front of something that is feminine and plural, we also use vieille, but we add an S to it. To say something is new, we use nouveau for masculine singular nouns, nouveau with an X in front of masculine plural nouns. Masculine singular nouns that start with a vowel, we use nouvelle. Feminine singular, we use nouvelle. And with feminine nouns that are plural, we use nouvelle to say that something is new. So a lot of forms for these three irregular adjectives, beautiful, old, and new. We also have some adjectives that we would change the last few letters from the masculine to the feminine. For example, adjectives that end in IF, you change the IF to IVE. So the adjective sportif becomes sportive. With both sportif and sportive, you would still add an S to both of those, a silent S, to make them masculine plural or feminine plural. Adjectives that end in EUX change to EUSE from the masculine to the feminine. So sérieux becomes sérieuse. It greatly changes the pronunciation as well. And adjectives that end in EL change to ELLE from masculine to feminine. So an adjective like ponctuel becomes ponctuel. Only the spelling changes, the pronunciation does not change. The possession of the adjective in a sentence is also very different from French to English. In French, most adjectives go after the noun that they modify or describe. For example, if we want to say, I have a red car, the French sentence would be, j'ai une voiture rouge, where the color rouge goes after the word voiture, different than English, where we put red before the word car in the sentence, I have a red car. However, there are some adjectives that actually go before the noun that they describe, and we know of those adjectives as the bags adjectives, where the word bags acts as an acronym for beauty, age, goodness, and size. So where all other adjectives go after what they describe, the adjectives of beauty, age, goodness, and size actually go before the noun that they describe. So some examples of the adjectives that show beauty are jolie, which means pretty, and beau and belle. Adjectives that describe age would be nouveau, vieux, âgé, and jeune. The adjectives new, old, which vieux and âgé both mean old, and the adjective jeune, which means young. Examples of goodness are bon or bonne, and mauvais or mauvaise. Bon and bonne, remember, mean good, and mauvais and mauvaise mean bad. And adjectives that are examples of size are grand and petit. So only those adjectives go before the noun they describe. All other adjectives, adjectives of color, other descriptions, nationality, those go after what they describe. So I have some sentences that I want you to try in your notes on your own, and we will go over them in class. So I want you to give me the French sentence for he is a tall boy. So pay close attention to the placement of your adjective for tall and the agreement for the word tall. I'd also like you to try to put into French, today we have a difficult test. You may have to go back and look up the word for difficult if it's been a while since you've used it. Again, think about the placement and agreement of that adjective. Translate the sentence, Anne is a French girl. And lastly, you have a red book. So in your notes, translate those 4 sentences into Français, and we'll go over those in class. Au revoir les élèves!